All right, I was just doing a little like last minute debriefing with our crew here to see if anybody was musical and wanted to open us up in song. But yeah, it's a little too early in Tales for that. Maybe by like a Friday seminar, right? Thank you guys for coming. I am Jimmy Mandeville, Director of Education for Bacardi. I obviously just figured out how to use a microphone right now, so I'll hold it here. But thank you. Our seminar today is Craft to Corporate. So if this is not where you're supposed to be, you can probably find another floor or another hotel within here, which I found. But we're gonna jump into quite a few topics. I figured, kind of in that very like craft to corporate, I tried to dress like the part. I was like, I'll be like business on the top and like party on the bottom, or, we saw so many like people. I know when we first started getting locked down and doing a lot of education from our homes or our kitchens or whatever quiet space that we had in our home, making cocktails and like, is that the bathroom behind you? Oh, yeah, it is. Maybe we could close that door. But it was like really funny to see a lot of my colleagues, that were like fully like buttoned up, like had the pin on, had the hair done, everything. And then it's like, okay, we're wrapped, and like stand up in like basketball shorts, yoga shorts, the whole deal, right? So it's good to be back in person. Good to like have spirits in hand. Did everybody get a cocktail? Welcome. Grab a cocktail. They're really good. And let me like make sure I have the other technology working over here. Maybe not. Do we? I feel like it's like a detonator thing. Here, you try, Shell. Is it? Oh, okay. There we go. So, to open us up, this is actually my dog. And kind of being craft to corporate, I spent a lot of my days making decks, right? And like for this, I was like, well, I'm just going to kind of use some pictures of, that all of you gave to me early on in putting this seminar together. I think one of the best things about doing seminars is that you get to like work with your friends in a different way, like not behind the bar. But I asked them to give me some great photos of them. So they're all, intellectual property of you or me. This one is mine, of my dog. But kind of getting into craft to corporate, it was a really exciting thing to jump into this topic. For me, I was a bartender before and then moved into the lovely world of brand ambassadoring, which, is kind of, I moved in at what I think is kind of the height of it, when people told me like, hey, well, you're a bartender, come be a brand ambassador and help us just move the needle. I'm like, I don't know what that means, but I'm all about it. And it's been interesting to see the different areas on the corporate side, and it's not just like, oh, okay, corporate is like kind of where you go to retire, go to, I don't know, kick your feet up and work a 9-to-5 job. And it's really, all of us that are up here have been able to like really pave our own paths and create our own roles. Right now, I'm the Director of Education for Bacardi, small little brand that maybe one or two of you have heard of. Yeah. But a lot of people don't know it's a family-owned company, and our sponsor today, Saint Germain, is one of the small brands that I get to work with that has become a bigger brand. We have many smaller brands beyond that, and via that, I get to work a lot with our hotel partners, and that's where we're razor focusing today on that, and really being able to take the skills that you have acquired for many years behind the bar. Maybe you're going into management, maybe you want to jump into a hotel job for benefits, strong pay, desired travel. There's probably a laundry list that we'll get into today, right? But I think there's definitely a kind of a job to be done and a way to pave that path and really make this corporate path cool. So again, thank you for coming. Thank you to Tales and to the Caps that are making all the lovely cocktails that we have moving forward. Woo! And thank you to you guys for investing your time, your money into coming out here to Tales, into spending the day in here in the seminar room versus at a lovely pool with cocktail, but there's more time for that. So let's just jump like really quickly into, okay, I'm a fail on this. Oh, there we go. What we're going to cover today, I tried to break it out into a number of categories because the other thing about this crew is they talk a lot. so I'm going to try not to talk as much. But we are going to go through who we are, a little bit about career mapping, the big breaks, like really, how do you set yourself up for them? I know a lot of people are like, I was just in the right place at the right time, but it still takes putting yourself in that right place at the right time. Management, kind of moving upward, but staying humble, the co-stars, because as they say, it takes a village. Mentorship, and everybody makes mistakes along the way. It's just really how you deal with them coming out the other side. Balance, it's been nice to see a lot of non-alcoholic options out here today, yeah? So, how we do that with the busy lives that we keep. And then the next generation, everybody that I look at in this room, we've come through the ranks of things, and it's like, how do we continue to do that and then build the path for people to come on the other side of this? So, I didn't show them this presentation before now. I asked them when they agreed to come do this seminar with me, and I'm like, yeah, just send me like a few like young gun photos of you, like your early days, and then like some of you now, right? So I think all of us are kind of circa 2009 to, maybe a little bit bumped up from there. But like I said, I started off in Los Angeles. I live in New York now. I get to run everything from our in-person and trade side of education to our partners with Southern Glazers and Bacardi, as well as Team Enterprises, and then a lot of our digital education. So yeah, kind of, spanned a long and vast area with that. But I loved your photo because it brought me back my first kind of parlay into this industry. It was bottle service in Hollywood. So I saw this picture of Miranda. I'm like, oh, look how cute that is. I'm a little bit, I think yours is 2009 or 2010. Yeah, I'm older than that. So, so we have Miranda Breedlove, who is the director of bars for Hyatt. Do you want to give us just a little kind of overview of what you do?
I would love to, yeah. So National Director of Bars for Hyatt's Lifestyle Division. I work with our boutique and luxury hotels in the Americas. Basically, every day my job is super different, but the things that I focus most on are our team's education and training, bar design, opening concepts, and helping make them successful and figure out how to navigate that within the corporate hotel structure.
Just a few things there, huh, Miranda?
It's fine. I'm fine.
Fantastic. And next to you, we have Marina Mercer and property mixologist, Wind Group, yes?
Correct.
Yes. So what is your day-to-day like there?
So I oversee 31 different bars and restaurants since the cocktail creation. I have some of my front row 3 bartenders here that came in, so thank you.
Vegas.
But yeah, Las Vegas is a beast, right? High volume, so it's taking craft cocktails and doing them in very, very high volume, and sometimes in 24-hour venues. So the cocktails never stop.
I think that anyone that's a cap, you can go work in Vegas, correct?
Yes, exactly. CAP is good training for Las Vegas.
Amazing. And then, Shell, I love this, but this is you and your current husband, right?
This is me and my current husband. Yeah, we both interviewed for the same job 13 years ago. I got it. He still decided that he wanted us to continue to date and work for me. And this is us setting up for our first media preview in my first hotel job with Kimpton Hotels.
I love that. He's a keeper.
He's a keeper.
And then last but not least, we decided to, in a full inclusion, decide to have a male on our panel as well. So
That's me.
We found this one that was available. Leo Robacek, who is the Vice President of Food and Beverage for Seidel.
Yeah, that's correct. I feel like my picture's so boring. You didn't tell me to give some
the fanciest of
I
all
had
of
some
us.
way
So
better,
this
more
is-
embarrassing photos.
I sent this as an email because we're all corporate AF, right? So they
Yeah.
got the same information that you did.
It's
and
funny
this
because
is what I got
look
from
way
them.
more corporate there than I do in life now, which is really weird. Yeah, I'm the Vice President of Food and Beverage, and I'm also blinded by the light at the moment. So if my eyes go cross, I apologize. For Seidel Group, Seidel owns the Nomad Hotel, and I've been with the company in some sort of way since 2005. So
this is a very long stretch.
yeah, it's been two different companies, but my day-to-day is real different. While I work for a corporate entity, we're probably the least corporate entity that is up here, in that there's not a lot of red tape. It's still small, sort of family-owned per se. And my day-to-day is from creating cocktails, creating menus, creating food and beverage concepts, creating decks for new concepts, helping structure deals, cleaning toilets, cleaning vomit, jumping behind the bar, getting in their way. I made guacamole the other day in the kitchen because we didn't have enough staff. That didn't really work out very well for everyone. So I do a lot of things.
I was just talking to someone the other day. I was like, it'd be like really useful like tools for us as like bartenders that want to own a bar or manage a bar is like plumbing, number one, and like electrician school for all of us. That would save us a lot of money,
And
safety.
programming.
Yes.
Yeah, we have a $1 million lighting system that doesn't work. And we don't know how to use in London. So the lights every day at 10:30 p.m. turn on a full day light, and all the lights turn off around 11, so it goes full pitch black. And they haven't been able to fix it in 3 months, so it's been fun.
Well, welcome to corporate.
I've opened like 15 hotels in the last year and a half or something like that, and we still haven't nailed the lighting on almost any of them at this point, but never on day one. Like, it's just, nope, hard pass.
Well,
All
Ritz
right, so
Carlton, if
beyond
you're
this
listening, you
seminar-
clearly have nailed
Yeah.
the lighting, so we need some tips.
If you're looking for a side hustle, which I know a lot of people pick them up, apparently lighting is the gig.
Lighting. Lighting
Heard
and
it here.
music, actually.
So I actually thought the same about your photo. Like I was like, what is this? This is like Boss Baby. Were you just like born with like little like tweezers and a coupe glass like
No.
back in like
I
early
obviously
2000? Like
Misread the
well,
narrative.
I had to
don't
dig a
know.
little bit deeper, but
Oh.
I did. The funny thing is this
What
one
is
was
that
actually
shirt?
It's like galaxies, look at that.
that is. It's a very intergalactic like experience there.
Uh-huh. It's a Campari event, obviously, and some sort of rooftop, but there's
I
still
did
way more
my
embarrassing
due
ones than the
Bacardi
other.
diligence and put the text over the Campari. So trying to keep us all employed by our employers.
There you go.
But yeah, I know. But it kind of made me curious. Like, what was your first job, or your first gig in hospitality?
My first gig in hospitality, I wouldn't really call it my first gig. I worked in, well, I went to University of Miami, so I worked at South Beach at a place called Monty's Stone Crab. I was 17, had a fake ID, and I became a server there. And then 2 weeks later, as you do in Miami, if anyone's ever worked there, people don't show up to work. They asked if anyone had ever bartended before, so I raised my hand. I had never bartended before, and I jumped behind the bar, and I had a Playboy's bartending book, and I would basically just ask, what color is it, and I would make a drink.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, this is your drink here. Do you want to tell us what we're drinking?
Yeah,
This yellow cocktail here.
that yellow cocktail.
The moon, the stars.
Exactly. It's a Lucky Bamboo, so it's vodka and Saint Germain cocktail with yuzu. There's a few other ingredients, but that's the gist of it. Really easy drinking. But to answer your other question, my first real gig was in 2003. I left the world of finance to explore a different venue, and I decided to try to go to medical school. And in the interim, I started working at a place in New York called Sushi Samba on 7th Avenue. And I was a server there, and they made us take these mandatory sake, beer, and wine classes. And I sort of fell in love with beverage. It was weird because at that time, everyone used to complain about coming in on Tuesdays and Thursdays at 2 p.m. and like drinking before work. And I was like the only person that was like really stoked about it. And actually, the beverage director was Paul Tangway. I don't know if you know him, but Tippling Brothers. And he sort of brought me into the world of beverages and finished my post-bac, but never went to med school and sort of stayed doing what I'm doing now.
With the tweezers at a very, young
It was
age.
actually a dropper, but yes.
Amazing. I love that. You've had you kind of confirmed it. I'm like, okay, it's probably a very like fancy path, like Sushi Samba. Other people are like, my first gig was Olive Garden.
Nice. Yeah, I sort of worked, I went from Monty's Stone Crab to Joe's Stone Crab to nightclubs. I started working at Crowbar in Miami and then Club Space. That was a fun time. And then Sushi Samba, Nobu, Bluefin, 11 Madison Park, and then I've been at 11 Madison Park Nomad since 2005.
Okay, well, we'll move on to like another path that's not quite as like sparkly. Just kidding. Yours is, Shell, for sure. But I wanted to jump in a little bit to like career mapping, right? Because not everyone's path is the same, you know? Like I couldn't even imagine kind of at that like early piece in my career, even like thinking I could walk into some of those places and apply for a job. And it's really, you know, I think it's really intimidating sometimes to be like, if I want to get into this industry, if I want to cross over, and I've worked at sports bars or national accounts or the independent like neighborhood bar, like how do I have that confidence to like take an audit of my skill set and to be able to, you know, get myself to where I want to be on a corporate side? So I would love for you to kind of jump us off here, Shell, as to your journey.
Well, and this photo is from the day you and I met, actually, too, which was in Tucson, Arizona. I won season 2 of Speed Rack for the Southwest, which ended up being a really pivotal point in my career because the gentleman holding my hand, Chris Patino, who I think a lot of you guys know, who ran trade advocacy for Pernod Ricard for years and years and years, not only encouraged me after that competition to move to New York, but then hired me 2 years later to be the national brand ambassador for Beefeater and Plymouth Gin. So I say that as a record too. I had no idea when I entered a competition where it would take my career, let alone my personal life and moving across the country on a chance. So do it, get involved, meet as many people as you can. It works out.
For sure. And then kind of from that point on, like I think a lot of us have done bar competitions before. I would say for me, that's what got me into working with Bacardi. I think like a lot of us, you get that competition bug and you're in it. You're like, I got second, I got the next one, right? And then it's hard to jump out of it, but it does give you a lot of exposure into the brand side of things and into working like quite a few events. And, you know, what would you say kind of from there, like as, you know, going through what's kind of gotten you to the point that you are now?
Yeah, I think I've always been an operator in my heart, and I had such an affinity for storytelling, and I loved the brands that I worked for. So for me, that felt great. Like I never imagined myself as a brand ambassador, right? Like when I started as a brand ambassador, like it was the boys who also DJ'd and were like on the tables dancing, doing laybacks, and like that's just not my vibe. And so I was kind of looking at this industry of brand ambassadors thinking like, I don't know if I really fit into this, if this feels right for me. And then they were like, well, what do you think about like fancy hotels and martinis? And I was like, well, yeah, that feels like a great extension of what I do. So I think from a brand ambassador into hotel side perspective, I just was really focused on staying authentic to what felt right for me and not positioning myself in a way that felt like I was mirroring my behavior to fit into something that wasn't original or organic.
And I think as we were talking on this session, it's exciting now because you've parlayed a lot of your experience. So you're director of brand, so you're not even as tightly woven into the bar side, correct?
Yeah, I'm off our operations team, and my job now is to be the bridge between marketing, operations, and finance to make sure that we're all in design, to make sure that we're all driving down the same road at the same speed, so that when we do open new hotels, new restaurants and bars, we're pretty petite. We've got 10 hotels, 26 restaurants and bars across the U.S., all in small markets. So we don't operate in L.A., New York, Chicago. We're in Fargo and Tampa and Memphis. So it feels very different than some of these larger hotel groups that have these massive resources available. We're pretty small.
Very cool. And yes, so I moved from Los Angeles to New York-ish, I should say, in December 2019. And like you asked me, like, you're like, oh wait, you're in Montclair? And I'm like, yeah, nobody knows it unless you're like from Jersey. It's like this little suburb. They think it's Brooklyn. If you live there, they're like, it's the other Brooklyn. I'm like, do people in Brooklyn say that, or do you just say it? But yeah, I can see that hotel from my place. Miranda, as we were talking, I think one of the great things, and you capped in what, 2015?
2015, yeah.
2015. I was 2012. I was in the cap room yesterday, and someone's like, "Oh, that was like when you didn't have colors in the codes, when like there was no, you were at the helm. I don't want
2009 to 2018.
I was 2012. Oh, you were 2009. No, I was 2012. I was like scared as shit from you. I was like, okay, he's gonna come next to me.
He was terrifying.
He
yes,
was
I
terrifying,
can
right?
confirm that.
Yeah. PTSD from.
I was a nice one. I was pretty sure.
Were you?
I guess not.
Yeah,
I thought I was.
everybody has different perceptions, just like, as we saw from the first setup of pictures, right? So, anyways, but moving back to Miranda, you had a great thing to say about, this experience and kind of moving up and like really creating this career path, and it doesn't always like have brand life in that. I guess that
Absolutely, yeah.
hierarchy.
First of all, thank you again to the CAPS. Like, we literally couldn't be here doing this without you, and I know exactly how hard it is. You guys are awesome. Really, really appreciate you. For me, though, like actually similar to Shell, I participated in, thank you, in Speed Rack, and that kind of gave me access to a different set of people and gave me the desire and inspiration to try to apply for more things and to do things that I didn't think I'd get into just to see what would happen. And when I capped in 2015, it was the first major cocktail conference that I'd been a part of. I had no idea what I was walking into, but I was coming from Chicago, and that gave me a certain sense of confidence, and I kind of knew what I wanted to present myself as. But one of the other white coats that year, Mike Ryan, did a little kind of seminar for the CAPS, and he got up on stage. He was the director of bars for Kimpton at the time, and he said, I just want everyone in this room to know that you don't have to be a brand ambassador to further your career. Like, it was just the thing everyone was doing, and I had this massive sigh of relief because I was like, that's not me. Like, I'm not a one spirit or a one brand person. My life was in sales with my family growing up, but it's not how I wanted to kind of interact with the community in that sense. And that allowed me to really think, like, what do I want to do? What do I love about this? How can I make that my job? And that kind of started my path here.
Fantastic. And I wrote these down in my notebook as far as like whose cocktail this is. I think that this is your cocktail, Miranda, or was that? Now it's the game of identifying your cocktail that you submit.
I don't
it's either
think it
yours
is.
or it's Shell's. Okay.
Shell, will you tell us what we're drinking?
Yeah.
Yeah, so this is a matcha tea infused Saint Germain with sparkling lemon soda and a little bit of Americano, essentially, like a white vermouth. And I love this drink because I think that there's something weird that happens, and Leo can probably tell us the chemistry behind why, but when you infuse matcha tea with Saint Germain, I get this like fresh pressed green apple from it that I think is super interesting and dries it out in a really fun way. So.
Thank you for the cocktail. As we're like going through this, I just kind of want to see by hands, like how many of you are bartenders currently? Okay.
Proud of y'all.
Yeah. Round of applause for that. Yeah. Woo! We do need
Tell your
more of
friends.
you. Many, many more. And many of you to like train up that next generation. So I'm really excited that you guys are here. And then how many of you, is this your first Tales? Wow.
It's amazing.
Wow. I didn't expect that. That's super amazing. I asked all of them up here how many Tales that they've been to and how many years of experience they've had in the industry. So collectively, between us, we have 41 Tales under our belt and 81 or 2 years of bar experience. Leo was kind of on the fence about the 1 year, apparently. So, yeah. Many, many years of Tales. I'm excited for all of you that this is your first Tales. It's, this is the 20-year anniversary, which is really exciting. This is my 8th Tales. And I'm super happy that it's back because there is a certain element about being there in person and not watching something on a screen. It's nice to have both. But I also just wanted to remind you, this is an active conversation. So if you have something that you want to impart, they've scaled up in years past. These microphones move. Please share, please ask questions. We want to make sure that we're tailoring this to why you guys came here as well. So with that, I'm going to move on to the big breaks. And I kind of broke this up as far as where I see kind of the categories, in it and things that have been successful for me as I've figured out where my path was. I'm sure like a lot of you, I didn't have a clear idea of what that was when I was younger, and it sort of evolved as it went on. But I think one of the biggest things is to listen, right? Listen to your colleagues, listen to your community, and most importantly, listen to yourself. It's one of those things that if you feel that you want to go in this direction, then listen to yourself. If you feel like this is not the job for you and that you need to seek out something else, like life is too short, explore something else and figure out how to get there. And another one is research. I know from reading some of your responses when I had asked prior to this in prep, research and learning. We have nearly, at Bacardi in the US alone, nearly 100 different ambassadors in the US. So I spend a lot of time through that process with people in the interview process, and it always kind of gives me a little when I see them that either they never mention the job, the brand, anything specific. I'm like, oh, I'm in a boilerplate interview with you. You're gonna go give this interview tomorrow to somebody else too. And I think especially on the corporate side, it's make sure that you do your research on the company that you're gonna work for, and that you research the position itself, that you ask those questions to who is interviewing you before you step into that room or on that call. And then we're in hospitality, right? So we're all here to create that space. I'd love to open it up to you guys if you want to jump in and add a few pieces to this.
Yeah, look, for me, I think something that you said that is really interesting, that Mike Ryan sort of showed you that there's other ways in this industry. I never thought I was going to work in this industry, so much that when I toured colleges with my mom, the first place I toured, they showed us a hospitality school. And I remember chuckling, and after we went to lunch, and I asked my mom, why would anyone go to school to work in a restaurant or a hotel? And I would have saved a lot of money, a lot of heartache, and a lot of time if I would have done that, but instead I didn't. But for me, I was always open. I always wanted to be sort of the best at what I was doing, although it might not be the career path that I wanted at that moment. And I was always just a person that wanted to try new things. So I think for me, it was this hidden insecurity of wanting to do well, and then being very analytical, and then going home every night and thinking about, did I do anything well, and learning from that, or did I do anything not so well and trying to learn from that? So almost every 2 years, I've had a different role in the same company, and a lot of these roles didn't exist when I started. So when I started working for 11 Madison Park, nobody was doing the beverage program. And I was really lucky that 11 Madison Park back then was a very different place. Nobody was really paying attention to us. And I made a lot of mistakes, and I got to do whatever I wanted with a lot of support from my staff and my team. And then I was able to create the first cocktail program there. At that time, there wasn't such a thing as a bar director. There was a beverage director that mostly did wine. So I sort of created that role. And then when I went into the hotel, it was sort of the same thing. And we sort of got to help in design and create a hotel. And again, there wasn't really a bar director at that time. And that's something that I became. And then from there, we've sort of grown and created paths. And like you, I do mostly creative now. I do concepting, but I do a little bit of everything. So one of the things that I do is I try to hire the next generation. And you mentioned something as well, do research. And for me, I don't even have that expectation anymore. And the reason I don't is because it's so sad that most people that walk in have done zero research. So I used to get really upset by it when I would interview somebody and be like, hey, why are you here? And they're like, oh, I don't know, I just walked in and this is a place. And I was like, okay. But the people that did walk in and had maybe spent 10 minutes on our website, had maybe spent 15 minutes on Google, those people were kicked up to a different level. So research definitely works. It definitely impresses people in this day and age right now. But then also, hospitality forward is something else that you mentioned. And for me, there's very, very few people that actually follow up in the right way. So I've probably interviewed thousands of people in my life. And I still remember 3 people individually that I interviewed, because after the interview, they all wrote handwritten thank you letters, which we're in hospitality, right? We're supposed to provide that extra sort of step, that extra moment of comfort for somebody, that extra, I guess, thank you in a way.
And it's bringing it personal, and that's what we do in the bar. I'm also a big person about cover letters, too. And when I sit in an interview and someone recites me their resume, I'm like, well, I can read, Like yeah, thank you. But it's it's really an opportunity, and so therefore it's a missed opportunity if you don't write a cover letter and really explain why you're at the Nomad or the Wynn specifically, or at this specific property at the Hyatt, or for you, like in these cities, it's very personal and like kind of bringing that neighborhood to life. And then it's like you have a second opportunity on the back end to like write this thank you and bring yourself like to the top of mind.
Yeah, for sure. And like I said, you would think that people would do these things, but it's probably less than 1% or even less than that. So those people definitely stand out. And for us, I don't know about all of you, I don't hire based on resumes. So when I see a resume, I don't care if you've never worked in hospitality. I hire based on interactions because I can't teach somebody to really care or to want to be there, but I can teach somebody to do the basics. So for me, it's more about presenting yourself in that way. One of the best people I ever hired had only worked at a Chili's. And he came in, had done the research, and was really excited about working there. And everyone's like, why would you hire this dude? And I was like, and he became one of our bar directors after years, which is pretty amazing. But it really pays to do that research. And then, listening, the other one on there is also really important. The amount of people that sit down and interview and don't listen to any of the questions that you ask them, just sort of respond and then can't regurgitate something that you ask them afterwards is sort of crazy. And then the last thing I'll say is have questions after every interview. It's what really sort of, if I'm on the tipping point or people have changed my mind by asking really insightful questions through things that I've told them. Even if they knew nothing when they walked in, the questions that they might have, and they're not questions based on like how much am I gonna make? They're questions based on like, what is it like to work here? Or what makes you different than other places? Or you said this, how does that work in practice? So having questions after an interview to me has always been super important.
Definitely. Marina, what do you look for like when you're hiring someone onto one of the many, many roles like within within Wynn?
So I'm all about soft skills. Like, we have the internet these days, right? All of us can make a good drink. We've all figured that part out. But there's so much more to look and psychologically to like read into a lot of those questions, right? Or drop a napkin and see if someone's going to pick it up on the way out, and those kind of things. I think just are really important to know that someone's conscientious, but resiliency, Jamie and I were kind of talking, scrappy. I'm a really scrappy person. I never really had, no one offered me a mixologist role. I created that role and showed people why they needed it and why I was the person. So it's always about kind of just being scrappy, and there's some people that have that. It's the je ne sais quoi kind of element in their eye. You can just tell they want it, they're gonna fight for it. Resiliency, but emotional intelligence, I think, is probably the biggest as a bartender. If we can't control the emotional tenor of our interactions, how are we going to control that for the room? And I think that's the hallmark of a good bartender, is someone that really can conduct the energy in the room and read a guest. And so I'm all about the soft skills, empathy, those kind of things. But those are some of them.
No, those are great points. I love that. I like scrappy people too. Like, that like no matter what goes like wrong, and there's a lot that goes wrong from lighting and other things in hotels, that like that person's gonna figure out, right? They're not gonna be like, so what do I do when that's broken? Like, well, you try to find a solution, like however.
And then you make the guacamole, right, Leo?
Yes.
Also, passion and curiosity, I think, are the two biggest things. There's an Albert Einstein quote that says, I have no special skills, I'm just passionately curious. And that's something I try to, and obviously he's very talented, and you all are very talented, but passion and curiosity, really, you just figure the rest out. If you have those two, you figure everything else out, you do the plumbing, you make the guacamole, and you make some good cocktails. So.
Love it. So let's move into management and motivation. And this is your bar team, Miranda.
That was actually the Bad Hunter bar team when we opened it in Chicago. That's one of my favorite places I ever worked.
Fantastic. And I just kind of put up a few things here as far as like things that I think are important as a manager, things that are important as you're being managed, because no matter what in the structure, like unless you're owning your own company, which then I think that you sort of are managed by all your employees, but you're sitting on both sides of it, right? So as far as like compassion and teamwork and skill share and organization, these are all things that like I find extremely important, and I'd love to hear from you, Miranda, how you kind of meter all of those things with your role.
Absolutely. It's actually a fitting photo for this because that's a place where I kind of realized one of these skills was important. One of the gentlemen in that photo is Josh Fawcett. He was the opening bar manager. I think Leo also worked with him, actually. And Josh did an incredible job of communicating to us what the cost of doing business was, the back end side of it, showing us how he was building recipe cards and why, how he was costing cocktails, which not a lot of bar managers teach their teams about. He told us what the glassware cost. Like he made us so aware of the pieces of what we were using and communicated it so effectively that we were able to care so much more about what we did. And I like to take that moving forward. I like to make sure that, part of the training for our leadership is that they learn how to cost their drinks and how to build a menu with that in mind while still making it impactful. I think the biggest point of that is the communication part of it, like how you communicate with your team, how you communicate with your own leadership, how you're able to express what you need, what you want, how I'm somebody who thrives on with positive feedback. But if somebody doesn't tell me that I'm doing well or badly, I always think I'm doing badly, right? So for me to be able to say to somebody, like, I would really appreciate if you would just give me feedback, that was helpful for me to, guide my leadership into me being more effective. And I kind of like to ask that question of our teams a lot. It's like, how can I support you most? Like, what do you need to feel successful in this position? And leading with that empathy, asking those questions, really caring about the people that you work with.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And it kind of brings me to one point. I know we were talking a little bit about interviewing and going about finding a role on this corporate side. And a lot of people that move over from the bar into, like I said, like sometimes you want to move over because you get benefits, you get like steady pay, et cetera. But sometimes you don't exactly know what that should be. And not that like I'm asking any of you to say exactly what you hire at, but kind of just giving, I think, Shell, it kind of came up in your questions, I asked you a little bit more insight into what is that expectation coming across and how can I make sure that I'm asking for the correct amount of money versus overshooting it or kind of just, having a full understanding.
Yeah, we talked about that a little bit. And one of the things that's come up already today that I love is I, Leo, and Mariana have all at some point in our career created our own jobs. But it's not just that we created our own jobs, it's that we had the tenacity to write those job descriptions and get those budgets approved. And unless you're a bar owner in this room, you get to come to work every single day and play with other people's money. And that's a huge privilege. And where we've found a lot of success is in how we get people to trust us with their money to make the creative decisions, to make the hiring decisions. So I think if there's like a takeaway from this, it's get in your business if you want to do cooler shit and get really comfortable with being able to financially justify why it's smart. Because, if I make a mistake, I'm not going to lose my house. And I think about that often.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think both of you said something interesting, and in terms of understanding the financials, that's not something that bartenders generally know. So a lot of times we think that we have this skill set, and we probably do have this skill set that's super important, but we don't understand how financials work, and we don't understand how to prove to an owner or somebody up on a corporate ladder that it's actually going to give a return. And understanding the financials of the restaurant or the bar that you work in, and understanding what that skill set that you have is and how you're going to make them more money, because at the end of the day, that's what it's about, right? You can do an incredible job and create an incredible program, but if it's costing more money than it's creating because you need more labor, you need more glassware, you need more expensive products, and it doesn't fit within that brand, then it's not going to be successful. But for me, like, management is a different skill set than bartending altogether, and I think a lot of people don't realize this in general. Like, being a manager is really hard. Not that being a bartender is not hard. And sometimes the best bartender does not make the best manager. And I see this with everyone that we promote, because we don't actually hire outside people unless we're doing a new opening. We always promote and mentor from within, and I think it gives people motivation, but it also allows people to learn these skills while they're working. And a lot of times people get upset because they're the best bartender, but they're not promoted. And you talk about feedback, and we try to give feedback all the time. So on an everyday basis, but not only feedback when you do questionable or a bad job per se, not constructive feedback that way. We also give feedback when you do a good job, because I think that's just as important. But we also do year reviews, 30-day reviews, and we tell people what they need to do in order to succeed or grow. And a lot of times that's not the skill set they have, and it doesn't mean that they can't learn it. Because management is far different from bartending. And I think a lot of times bartenders, when they become managers, they actually end up being really shitty managers at first, because you're so good at the job that you did. You're so good at this job, and you can do it really well, and that's why you got promoted. But when you get promoted, you want to default into doing that job again to show everyone your worth, instead of teaching your team in order to do that job. And it might seem like, don't worry, I'll do it myself. And I went through that, and I don't know if any of you went through that. And it's something that I had to learn, because as we continue to grow from...
That's the hardest thing, I think, to learn.
It
Is to
fully
like,
is.
be like, okay, how do I like I could just do it, right? I think a lot of us are here. So to be able to like have a full understanding that you can actually pass that job and explain through that to someone.
Yeah, and if it were on a graph, it'd be like, okay, it works this much, and then as you grow, then it starts to decline, and then it starts to affect your team even more, because you are one person, and then all of a sudden your team isn't getting the support that they need because you're not empowering them, and they're not learning because you're not empowering them. And it's funny, because I tell every manager this when they get promoted, and I would say 99% of the managers still do this, and 6 months in, we have to have that conversation, and it takes a moment for you to learn and grow, but that is something that's super important.
Agreed. I'm going to keep us moving kind of I knew this was going to be tight to kind of keep us in an hour, but we're going to try. So, it does take a team, and this is kind of, two-pronged, and this is you, Marina, which is a great picture of like kind of you behind the bar, and like everyone knows, right? You can't be a bartender without your team, right? Without your bar back, without your dishwasher, without you you'd be lost, right? And it's the same way on the hotel management track. So I was hoping that you could give us a little bit of kind of eyes into like your operation as to like who all of those really integral people are. 'Cause especially for me as an ambassador in Vegas, I remember going to my first training and they're like, oh, okay, we're gonna go out down into the basement. You're gonna be in this room. I like met about 10 people that gave me business cards that were in suits that were a director of something. So yeah.
Definitely. So Las Vegas is a massive place, and so is the property. But I think you said it best when you say empower, really empower people. And again, I created my job, but then I created a job for someone with me, an assistant mixologist, and I really empower him to kind of help and train, and it really helps us grow as a team. But my advice always is when you go onto a property is I always get in with the chef. The chef has all of the intel. They have all of the contacts. If you're looking for great produce, you're looking for new exciting products, things like that, I always get in with the chef. And like you said, our teams are definitely, there's a lot of C-level, but finding people that kind of that speak your language, and really just creating relationships there.
Shal, do you want to jump into this one as well? Because I'm curious, you've worked at quite a few different types of hotels. Yeah.
Well, and I think that, so when I started in hotels, I was a bar manager and then a director of food and beverage, and then they were like, we want to have you manage 3 properties. Now we want you to oversee openings and transitions. And so it kind of kept moving. And then I got into this space where I would go and deliver trainings, and I'd be on site for 10 days, and then I would leave. And I wouldn't see these people for 6 months. And how do you continually train? And for me, I changed that language, because language I think is really important in how we talk about mentorship, into not how do I continually train, it's how do I earn trust every day? And how do I earn trust with those teams that are operating in markets that I don't live in, for them to know and understand that I am an advocate for them, I do have their best interest in heart, and I am a resource that they can reach out to lean on, to provide support questions, or like vent sessions sometimes when like shit's not going great. And they can't necessarily talk to the person next to them about it because they need to have a difficult chat. So I think that having those co-stars, having that trust as being something that's top of mind is really important.
Shell, I had to jump in on that because we have similar jobs, and I think that's so important. But something I had to quickly learn and understand was that I needed to also respect my own boundaries in that kind of a world. If I was open and available to everybody all the time, my emotional energy was gone. It's so hard to hear people having a hard time, and it's an impossible job that I'm asking people to do, and I know that, and I care so much about them, but it can't also destroy me in that sense. Like, I need to be able to say, like, hey, we're going to have this conversation. I'm an open book. You can call me every time. But also, like, if there's a professional and a personal boundary, we need to identify that, and we need to be able to move through that together so that we're both having the right conversations. It's going to actually make things better. It's going to be more impactful for the person I'm talking with.
Yeah, I was just sharing this with somebody that I've been mentoring for a while, where I'm kind of had to say to them, like, I'm here to teach you how to fight your battles. I'm not here to always fight them for you. And that for this person was like, great. Like, I don't need to like sick you on this thing where I need additional support or additional resources, be it glassware, which is, a problem for all of us everywhere because of all the supply chain things. But to set that intention with mentorship and with like teammates to say, like, hey, here's how I'm gonna be lending you some support so that it hopefully is getting you the results that you're looking for.
And you transition us nicely into our next thing here. Being a mentor and a mentee, and this is just like management, right? Like, no matter like how far up you get, you still need to seek it on both sides. But, communication is great, and having that clarity with someone, because if, most people that you're looking to mentor you, like, they're really fucking busy, right? So you're looking for them to mentor you because they've been highly successful in what they do. And so being very clear on both sides as a mentor of, this is what I'm going to go through with you, and this is how, kind of setting those goals. And on the other side, as a mentee, some of my more successful relationships with that have been like, hey, I really want to speak to you about this, and this is a side that I feel like I haven't grown my career that much in, and I've loved to kind of schedule, this amount of time here and there to dig in and be very specific on these topics. And so, beyond like defining that expectation, just being open and honest about that, I think is, time is money, right? And so you can't waste time. None of your mentors can waste time. And beyond that, it's just, kind of finding new ways to like innovate and create in this space. So, Leo, I know that you've mentored so many people from the Nomad. I think my first year capping, it was like 25% people from the Nomad. I don't know who was running the hotel, but
Yeah, I mean, to me, this is one of the hardest things, because I think you said it in that, well, I think everyone here sort of said it. It's about finding that personal space and that balance. But at the end of the day, it's a huge responsibility. It's a huge investment in your time in order to mentor somebody or in order to be a mentee. So I think, like you said, you should come in with very, very specific, focused questions. The amount of times that somebody tells me that they want to be mentored, or somebody tells me that they want to talk to me, they come in and they have the most vague, generic questions. They're like, how do I do what you do? And it's like, okay, well, that's...
how much time you got, right?
That's not the most productive way of us sitting down here. Like, why don't you tell me what it is that you want to grow or improve upon? Or if you want some constructive feedback, give me specific parameters or areas in the constructive feedback that you want. And I think a lot of people as a mentee don't understand that it's going to take a lot of time and effort for you as well. So it's not just tell me what to do. It's about, okay, I'm going to tell you how to solve this issue you have. You're going to go back and you're going to do some homework. You're going to give me that homework and we're going to go over it together. And I love doing this not only because I think it's super necessary and I've had a lot of people really support me, but as we all know, to grow, you need to have a strong team behind you. And right now, we're in a crazy staffing shortage. Like, the amount of people that I need to hire for multiple properties is insane. And I know that everyone is overworked, and I know that everyone has no time, and including myself. But I like to invest time in this process because I'm sort of investing for the future. But if you come and you approach me and you don't do the work, then in essence, you're wasting both of our times. There's no point of you coming and you doing this, and that's where the honesty comes in. And I'm brutally honest when we mentor. It's constructive, it's non-emotional, But if you were coming in and you really, really want to know and you want that mirror held up in your face, like come in and understand that it's not personal and I'll never use any emotional words, but I'm going to give you really honest feedback, and you should want to, or you should be in a place that you can accept that honest feedback. And at the same time, I expect them to give me feedback as well. You know, you sort of mentioned it. People like to be managed in different ways. So it's about understanding that every single person's not the same, and understanding how you're going to get the most out of that person, and adjusting your management style or your mentorship style to that individual person.
That's great advice. Were you going to say something, Jill?
No, I think it's important to just consider how much in your leadership are you delegating? Because if 100% of your leadership is exclusively delegating things, that's not leading, that's not helping someone to grow. So kind of do a little mental checklist of what are the non-tangible things or ways or stories that you're giving to your team to help them understand the bigger picture of the goals that are happening without checklists, even though checklists are also very important.
I like a good checklist for sure. Marina and I were talking earlier about like kind of tabs, like mental tabs you keep, and then it's also like my computer probably has like 100 of them open right now too. So yeah, I like
I think that part's also important. I think it's a follow-up more than anything. The amount of times that people, or that I've asked people for advice and then there's been no follow-up for any work, or people have delegated things to me and there's been no follow-up. I understand that you delegate because you want to take something off your plate, but if you're not following up and you're not looking at the work and you're not investing time, then you don't know if you're doing a really good job as a mentor or as a leader. So what I do whenever I have a conversation with somebody, I jot down notes, and then I go and I put calendar invites in for the time that I think that I should be responding to this person. So I'll put calendar invites in, and sometimes I have like 50 calendar invites in one day of like, okay, I need to check up on this. And then if I could push it forward, I will, because obviously it's too much to do for one day. But that's something I learned in the beginning too, because I would not follow up all the time. And then people would tell me, well, you told me to do this, but then you never followed up, or there's no feedback. So I found that it was just a waste of time, and it was this sort of cyclical loop that nobody was really learning. So it does take a little bit more time and organization, but I think that's really important as well.
calendaring is a good place for everybody's OCD, is what Leo was telling us.
When I started this job, I was still writing my calendar down in like a little journal notebook. That ended so quickly. Can't even imagine it now. Oh, no, I never lost it, but trying to change the date and time 15 times
Trying
a
to
day.
share it with people, it doesn't work, right?
Take a picture, like, hey,
Yeah,
here on my
no. Well, it kind of like goes into, so now you know, going to the corporate side, you got to like lose the journal, move into the digital. But kind of going into mistakes, right? We all make them. I think one of the biggest things here is like, what do you learn from them and how do you build upon them? Or if you are managing a team, how are you jumping into it with them to make sure it's not just a disciplinary thing and that everybody, like yourself included, are growing from it. I just kind of flagged a few things that I think are most people's areas that the mistakes happen in. Money issues, we talked about this early on. So when you are responsible for someone else's money, or you are sitting there and putting a cocktail that actually costs $12 to make, we kind of run into some issues as we start expanding that over, say, 41, plus locations, correct? And then also like being in the know. One of the biggest things that I've learned is like just listening and being humble and being like, okay, let me take a beat and like, really listen to the situation before just acting and moving, which also goes into it's not just about you. There are so many teams, so many people around you, so many people that you don't have eyes on every day, even if you do have the technology that you can like be staring at your coworkers through your iPad. Like if once you get into stretching across the globe, like how are you really setting yourself up for success? So any of you that want to jump in here on kind of faux pas that you've made, or that like that maybe someone on your team has made, and how that was a great learning experience would be great here.
I think a faux pas that not a lot of us realize is not about getting the job, it's about keeping the job. And once you're in a corporate position, you have a lot of eyes on absolutely everything you do, and that's personally and professionally. So I've had to have some tough conversations with people that have a more public role, and that includes your social media, what you say to people when you're out, even if you've had a few too many drinks, the amount of alcohol you consume in public, and those kind of things. When you're in a corporate position, people always have eyes on you. So that's some piece of advice I always give to people on my teams, is really, like, obviously live an authentic life and be your authentic self, but know that you are your own brand, all of your actions are your own brand, and you are representing a larger brand, and all of that's really important. So.
I think it took me longer than it probably should have to realize that it was okay to ask somebody when you didn't know something. And that even my first job that I ever had, it was a music venue and a beer bar, and I didn't need to know cocktail recipes, but the owner threw a big Thanksgiving party, and there was a bunch of bar owners and higher-end bartenders that were at this party, and somebody asked me for a French martini, and instead of saying, I don't know how to make that, what's in it, I just made something up, which clearly in my mind was brilliant at the time, because no one's going to know what difference, right? And the next day, the bar manager came up to me and said, hey, did you make some French martinis last night? I was like, yeah. He goes, what'd you put in them? And I was like, He goes, great. So we're going to start training together now. And that was actually, it was a massive opportunity for me to be, taken in by somebody, as opposed to being like, well, you're fired, and learning to, kind of take that from square one in that sense made me realize how important it is to lead in a similar sense. But also, like, when you ask the question, you don't look like an idiot, right? Like, everyone thinks like, oh God, I don't know this, they're gonna think I'm stupid, but it just leads to more opportunities to learn together and to create a better environment behind the bar or in your team. So always ask the questions.
Yeah, I love that story, because I think for me, it's all about the culture you set up. So it's not that I love when people make mistakes, but I sort of do, because it's a way for me to learn and for them to learn as well. So we tell everyone off the bat when they start, like, you're gonna make mistakes, it's fine. Like, we believe in second chances, we believe in third chances, we believe in redemption. So for me, it's about a few things. It's about setting that culture where it's okay to ask and it's okay to make a mistake. And then the second part is, for all my managers, we teach them about leadership, and we teach them that when you have to be consistent and you have to be nitpicky. So if somebody does something wrong, you can't pick and choose your battles, and you can't pick and choose when you're gonna have that conversation and correct them, for a lot of reasons, a multitude of reasons. From an upper level reason, it's so you don't get sued. But from a lower level reason, it's so you can be consistent and give people feedback and make sure everyone's on the same page. So when we write somebody up, and I hate that word, we use it as a teaching moment, and it's a contract that you have with that person. You listen to them, and you say, what happened? Because you want to give them the benefit of the doubt. You want to find out what happened, not only to find out if they actually did something wrong, but to find out if maybe you taught them something in the wrong way. And then you listen to them, you respond to them, and then you make a verbal contract of what they're going to do in order not to do this again and how they're going to fix this issue. So I've learned a lot from these really uncomfortable moments that sort of suck, but if you go into it with the mind that it's not going to be an uncomfortable moment, it's going to be a moment that we're going to come out of it together and that we're going to learn from it, then it's a little bit easier. But I've learned a lot from it as well, and it's changed our management style, and it's changed the way that we've trained, because if somebody keeps doing something specifically wrong the same way, likelihood is that it's because they were never taught the right way. And if they weren't taught the right way, it means you never taught your trainers or your head bartenders the right way. Sometimes people just do suck and don't care, and then that's a whole other story, but that's usually not what it mostly is.
I guess we all kind of keep circling around, like, one of the biggest jumps from bartender to manager, manager to director, corporate, right, is the increased cadence in which you have to have difficult chats, be it with your team, be it with your peers, be it with finance directors. And I'm curious to know if you guys, because I definitely have this. I have two different people that I call, and I call it like my run through, right? Of like, I need to have this difficult chat this week, and like, we don't work together. You're a personal friend, mentor. Can you kind of like listen to me word vomit all of these things and give me some critiques and feedback? Do you guys have those same relationships that are not people you work with today?
I do. I have my husband, and so he's my phone a friend on all things, but especially work. And I think a lot of us are in this room because we're really passionate people. We really care about what we do and really, really love it. But with that comes a lot of emotion. And when you are in a management role, you can't just word vomit a bunch of emotion on people. It's very personal, right? So it's a lot of time I have my first round with him, and we separate some of my emotion, talk through that, remove that, just so it's more digestible and not so personal with that chat.
I think it's important too because a lot of times you have a preconceived notion of who somebody is and what they do. And we no longer really have conversations on an everyday basis with people. Most of our communication happens through email, through text, through WhatsApp, through something. And a lot of times you can read that with whatever inflection you want. So I have that with people all the time. One of my managers in particular will always call me about another manager, and we'll read through it together. And I was like, okay, I could see how you're reading it that way, but have you ever read it this way? And I'll read it to him verbatim in the way that I'm reading it. And he's like, oh yeah, maybe they're not being a dick.
Yeah, I was going to bring that up as well because, like, when I have to have a difficult conversation with someone, I'm not doing an email or text because it leaves it so open to interpretation. They're not putting the same inflection that you have in your mind and those same pauses with it. So I think that, from a learning perspective with mistakes, it's always better to have that in person, whether it's like on the phone or, in person is best. It's hardest as a manager because you don't really want to sit across from that person and have the hard conversation, but it's nice when you have like someone to practice, whether it's like your husband or a friend or someone that's like not attached to the situation at all to go through that dry run with. One other thing here too, I think, as we think about like different people's roles coming into these, like, and with money issues, we touched on it a little bit, but I think that there's as far as like great resources that you guys have come across, like whether it be like templates or guidance, or everybody has been here before, as far as like how to kind of get better at these things that are very objective things in business. Do you have any great tips here? The internet?
Well, I mean, I think for me, it depends on what position you're in, but I always like to ask, especially if I'm working with a new finance department or if I'm consulting on a project, if they actually have templates or if they have specific ways that they like to do things. Finance principles work similarly across all boards, but it's actually very different in terms of presentation and in terms of how people do things. And also, if you know nothing about finance, like pick up a book, and I know it's hard, but there's a lot of great resources out there, and there's a lot of books for you to learn just even the basics, because it's important for life, but it's also important as you continue to grow, especially all of us that are working in corporate structures. The higher up you go, the less that they care about creative or how cool this is, the more that they care about these decks or these presentations you build, the more that they care about how is this going to profit us? How is this going to, how are we going to profit from this at the end? How much is this going to cost to implement? So the amount of people that come up to you and are like, oh my God, I have this amazing idea, let's do this. And then you're like, cool, have you thought about how much it's going to cost? And I'll walk through them, I'll walk through it with them, and we'll talk about like a budget and a forecast. And then they see like, oh shit, it is a cool idea, but it's going to cost us like $10,000 to take off the ground, and it's only really going to affect 2 people, and it's not going to make us any money, and we're never going to recoup it. And other times it's like, oh wow, we can do this, and it's going to make us a lot of money. And while it's not all about money, obviously for me it's more about leadership and training and investing in people. But at the end of the day, a business is a business, right? And you're not going to be open if you're not making money.
I think along those lines too, is another thing that no one teaches you when you're a bartender is how to read a P&L and what you don't realize the costs are of the business. And no one taught me that. I Googled it, right? And then I sat there and I tried to go through P&Ls and understand it. And now that I know that, like one of the things I'll ask, our beverage leaders or our bar managers or our GMs, like when they first start, is like, has anyone walked through a P&L with you? Because I don't want you to feel like you don't know and you can't ask that question. And at a certain level, like, maybe you think you should know this and you just haven't had the opportunity. So there are things that you can Google that I think are important, but it's also kind of dependent on how you learn. If you need someone to walk you through it, you should ask for that opportunity to really understand where those numbers are going and coming from.
It's something we started doing, although I've been in this company for a long time, and we just started doing this. And it's through one of the recommendations of one of our head bartenders is we started doing very basic daily P&Ls that we actually send out to the team. So it doesn't have all of the superfluous information, but it has your sales, your labor costs, your cost of goods for that day. So the day that people work really hard and they're like, fuck, like this was a hard day, they can see where that needle went, how much money they made. And other days where people didn't work that hard, it doesn't mean that you didn't make money. Sometimes you actually make money in a more smart way. So we actually started learning a lot from that, and starting learning
I
a
love
lot from
that because
efficiencies.
it's like everybody is, as you're, working these long shifts behind the bar, you're investing your time and your efforts. So to be able to see where that money is going, because if you were doing a startup company, you would get those on the daily, weekly basis. So it's nice to see that at the end of the night.
And also as a
well.
manager, a lot of your bartenders, especially when you work with big corporate structures, like these guys are making so much money. And when you start showing them, you're like, actually, we lost $2,000 today. And you're like, oh, okay. It's not that we're making so much money. And other days, you're like, wow, we made a lot of money today. That's good work. What did we do that was so incredible today? What did we do that was different?
Yeah, I have to untrain a lot of our managers in where their brains go with this specifically, because I think that as bartenders, we're trained like, I gotta cut costs. I gotta find bottle deals and work with suppliers, and like none of us make more money by cutting costs. We don't. At the corporate level and as bartenders, we make more money by driving revenue. And so I want to see from my managers, from my bartenders, that's where they're spending their non-tangible energy. Is like, hey, I had this idea for this event, for this party, for this thing. And I know in our job specifically, we have a lot of people that look at the numbers, but we don't have as many eyes and resources looking at like, how can we make our spaces full in off-peak times?
Yeah, and I think a lot of times it's, cutting costs, while they are important, you're right, driving revenue is the most important thing. But a lot of times people don't realize that you need to spend money to make money. So to me, it's about the long dollar. Every time we think about things, we might lose money on specific things that we do, but what we're doing is building a base of regulars or investing for the future. So a lot of times we'll do things that make us zero money, but what they do is they build us more following, more regulars, and it allows us to make more money in the future. And that's a really hard thing for some people to understand, especially if you work for a corporate structure that is owned by like a private equity firm or somebody that just looks at numbers. Because, I'm sure everyone here works in restaurants or bars, right? Like, so from a business perspective, we are in the shittiest business in the world. Like, everyone else that like sells things, if anyone would make a 10% like margin, which in our industry is actually pretty decent, they would be out of business. Like, most places make 50, 60, 70% margins on what they do. Otherwise, they wouldn't be a viable business. So when people come in and they look at a P&L and they're like, this is all you're making for all that work, and they look at top line revenue and they're like, but you sold 30 million last year. How are you only making 10% on the bottom line? It's because it's a business we're in, right? People don't want to pay a lot of money for cocktails. They don't want to pay a lot of money for food. It's not like we're building an iPhone and we can charge whatever we want for it because other people can't make it. So that's also another interesting thing to see.
It is, and I think that's a great thing, like, too, like, from independence, like, depending on what type of bar that you're working at, like, some place like Seidel or, like, any of your properties where you have multiple properties, there's more leash, right, to go ahead and, like, be like, okay, we're going to take a loss here, meaning that, like, we're going to invest, and we're going to wait for that growth, like, as far as, like, return on investment on things, it's a much, like, tighter turnaround on things. So as you jump into corporate jobs, you have to kind of really consider, as you're putting together your plan for your bar, for your team, for any programming that you're doing, that you're really looking at the business itself and what that schedule is.
I think one of the things that really one of the many things that surprised me about corporate, like working for Hyatt, it's a massive company, and this company had systems in place before we created a lifestyle division, which is really focused on individuality and creativity and the sense of place for it. And I found out that Hyatt had this kind of internal system that I'm probably not even supposed to talk about here, but
this is a safe place.
It's meant to go into the hotels and figure out where you're losing money and tell you what you do to change it, which it turns out will completely decimate your creativity and the passion behind these restaurants and bars. So one of the things that my boss brings up a lot with me is like, we need to do everything we can to prevent this from having to happen, because if we get there, we're gonna lose it, right? We don't have that chance anymore. So a lot of that, figuring out how we can create an impactful revenue driving experience that we also believe in, will save us from losing that love and that energy.
Yeah, fully. When you get consultants that come in, they don't understand the business, and they're like, no, you should only have 1.5 bartenders working today, because that's the way it works.
1.25.
And it's like, okay, it's not what we do, but you're fully right. Like, I've only worked for lifestyle brands in that way, and it's a very different sort of cost structure. But it's important to know, and I think it's also important that a lot of people, like, in order to drive revenue, especially a small business owner, they don't invest in specific things that cost money because they don't see the return on it immediately. So PR marketing is huge. If nobody knows about you, nobody's going to come in. And at the end of the day, you go around and people are always like, but my bar is better than this bar, or why am I not seen? And it's like, okay, well, your bar may be better than this bar, but this bar invests a lot in PR. And that's why they're doing so well. And it's not that they're not a great bar. It's one of them is investing in this while this other one is not. And there's a lot of really good examples out there. Like Dante is an amazing place, but they had incredible PR, and they invested a lot of money. They weren't making money in the beginning because they were investing so much money in PR, but within a few years, they were able to grow so much, and they were able to make a lot of money because they're always full, because they're bringing in revenue, because they invested in the beginning in all of this PR marketing.
Sure. Before I forget, what have we been sipping on, Miranda?
Sorry, what was
What have we been sipping on?
Oh
This
yeah,
is yours.
sorry. So this isn't a cocktail that I created, but we're using Saint Germain today. And when I worked with, it was bartender I worked with who turned into a brand ambassador for Saint Germain in Chicago, and I always gave him crap. I'm like, cool, quarter ounce, that's it, buddy. Like, that's all you're getting out of me. And so he set out to prove me wrong with this cocktail. It's called the Mira, or the Mother of Adonis. I'm a big sherry nut, so any chance I can use it, I will. But it's actually 50-50 Amontillado sherry and Saint Germain with some orange bitters. So you can kind of see how that still plays and works out. And I just thought it'd be a fun one to throw in.
Thank you. It's delicious. And I noticed from the cocktails that you all decided to select for this seminar, a little bit like lower ABV, or like refreshing spritzes, like sherry as modifiers. And it just brings me to kind of, well, we're a little bit kind of have quite a few years in this industry, but, most people that are going into hotel or, management in general, it is a long haul, right? And so how do we really find that balance between our work? How do we communicate that with our staff? How do we find it in ourselves, which is sometimes a fight within? So yeah, Marina, I'll start with you on this one.
I'm the worst at this, so I feel like a hypocrite even starting this, but it's something that I'm very mindful and consistently trying to put into place in my life. But again, I do a lot of things that I love, and so how do you stop that? But when I met my husband, and we have a 2-year-old and 4-year-old baby boys, I guess they're not babies anymore, but my promise was that they always get the best of me, never the rest of me. So when I'm teetering that rest of me line, I remember. But then also, I'm a workaholic, so if I'm not working, what am I doing? So I created a company and a product with my husband, and that my family can be part of, and those kind of things, so I can still have that passion and include them in, so it's not such a separate entity. But boundaries, especially with email now, I mean, we all have to be present all the time, and you wake up to a barrage and 32 emails and the 7 hours you slept or whatever it is. So I try to have coffee first, take a moment, create some space, and especially not putting any emotion in those emails. So I try to read and create some boundaries with email, and just with team as well. I created my job, but I also created my hours, and I think when you can tell someone why this works best. If I have a happy life here and I'm not working weekends in Las Vegas and I'm spending it with my family, I'm going to come here and give 100% on the days that I'm there, and really just show proof of concept and why things work like that. But yeah, it's a balancing game, and it's hard, but that's helpful.
I know one of the things that you said is one of the kind of most monumentous things that's happened is that to kind of figure out of being unessential for a moment. I think all of us went through this during the pandemic, right? We're oh, okay, what am I doing, right? And how am I keeping that value? And, some people take it and they run with it. You started a company that your family can be a part of, but, as you were coming into Win, when I was first talking to you, you were coming on part-time, correct? And now you're full-time with them property and mixologist. So how do you, really navigate all the things together?
It's difficult. I was hired on as a consultant. The Win had been wanting me to come on for some time, and I said, I just started a company, a product, and it was, just coming out of the pandemic. I'll come on as a consultant. And I think one thing, the underpinning of a lot of things we're talking about is gaining trust. And If you can gain someone's trust, then you can show them how you can make them the money or why you can do the creative and the cool things. So it was gaining their trust, and within a few weeks, it was like, well, we want you to be full-time. Okay, we want to give you a promotion. We want to do these things, but it's about being conscientious, consistent with your work ethic, and really just showing why you can make the money, and then trying to balance that. But they've just been so good to me that it made me trust them on the other side, and just trying to figure it all
I think
out.
that's great, and I think that you're also in a place that you had just proven this worth. You were, you
figured
were
out
the
how to keep the
iPhone
job.
that Leo was talking about, So, I think that you'll find that within many companies. We've been talking about how we've created these roles for ourselves, but it's because we've gone through all the steps and, made our companies really see the value in what we bring to the table, and something that they didn't have within their companies before. One of the things on balance too, Miranda, I love your post shift that you do with your crew, as far as your check-in. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. We talk
You're
about
like,
this
"Wait,
a
what?"
lot, and I think it's a bigger picture. Like, balance is something that I will continue to have to work on my entire life. Whether I think I have it, I probably don't tomorrow. But really, it's your mental health that's important to me, and figuring out how to take care of yourself, your body, your mind, your energy, your emotions, your relationships, the things that are really important to you. And the post-shift thing is kind of, we do a lot of pre-shifts, and we talk about how we are going to do the service, who's coming in, what are we out of, what are we doing specials of, but having the chance to really connect with people after the shift, and having them, if you're not physically there, because you shouldn't be there the entire day, and for 24-hour bars, that would be impossible. But having them really be able to write down about their day, and then checking in with them after, like, hey, why was this hard? What did we learn? Who were these guests, and what were the successes and the failures, and having that connection, knowing that you care about how their service went, how their shift went, how their emotional energy is. And so I think it's more than just starting the day. You kind of have to finish it with the same type of intention.
Yeah, I think that's great. I think we can all kind of employ that in that check-in, whether it's like a post-shift thing or just checking in with your teams on all accounts. And then the other piece was really location. You moved recently, yeah, Shel?
I did move, yeah. I spent 10 years bouncing back and forth between New York and LA, and then global pandemic, and I moved to Kansas City, and now work on and focus on a lot of bars and restaurants in smaller markets. And for me, I think about balance a little bit differently. I don't think about balance as my relationship with work and not work. I think about balance around my need and drive and desire for excellence, and then also meeting people where they're at. And I think that that's a hard balance struggle that we don't talk about a lot, where I want to push people and push people and push people so that they're coming in with the intention of being better every single day. But we all know that we lost a ton of people in this industry due to, whatever reasons they decided to explore different professional careers, lives, tracks. And a lot of that institutional knowledge is now having to be retrained from day one. So I'm spending a lot of my balance moments, thoughts, conversations around, okay, we're teaching people how to cut lemons again because not a single person in the building knows how to manicure twists, and finding the patience and the ability to be present in some of those tasks, conversations, and training tools is how I'm approaching balance right now.
Sorry, multitasking over here. The drink that we have coming out to you next, if I don't spill this on myself.
Of course. So I mentioned a little bit about a product I created. This was during the pandemic. Again, I am a workaholic, and suddenly I had all this time, and Las Vegas had closed down, and what was I going to do with myself? Has anybody been to the Cosmopolitan in Las Vegas before? I was a mixologist there for 11 years, almost 11 years, and I created a cocktail called the Verbena. It's kind of being heralded as like a modern classic. It's off menu. Completely word of mouth, but it's by sales the most popular cocktail in all of Las Vegas. And is it a good cocktail? Yeah, it's fine. But Yes.
Holy crap, ladies and gentlemen. Your secrets.
But really, what the secret sauce is, the thing that makes it so compelling is a flower, and you may have had it before. It's called the buzz button. Buzz button is a natural alkaloid that speeds up your salivary glands and turns you into a super taster. So you eat this flower, your tongue starts tingling, and you start tasting different nuances and flavors. So this cocktail does come with instructions. Anyone that has it, go ahead and grab, and stay with me here. Lick the side of the glass. You want to lick that blue dust. And your tongue will start tingling. It's a good thing. It's supposed to happen. And then as you sip your cocktail, you're on a journey of flavor. And I loved using Saint Germain in this cocktail. We all know we have thousands of taste buds, but we have millions of olfactory receptors. So we do taste predominantly through aroma, and with those beautiful floral aromas kind of wafting up, you're really tasting in layers. And it's a journey of flavor there. So it is. Saint Germain, Grey Goose essences, strawberry, lemongrass, citrus, and then again, I work in Las Vegas, so I think being tuned into your environment and what people want and need. You come to Las Vegas, everything is over the top, so cocktails have to be beautiful as well, right? We eat with our eyes, we drink with our eyes. So butterfly pea flower obviously is a really fun cocktail ingredient there on the top, low pH balance. So when it hits that citrus, it's turning from that blue to purple to pink, and just a fun kind of experiential cocktail. That was kind of what I was looking to do.
I think you've definitely upped the ante on the Tails cups and what you can do with this 4-ounce cup. So congratulations on that. Thank you for sharing that. And I know we only have a few minutes left, but I want to jump into next generation, as far as like us moving forward as an industry. I spend a lot of time in this space with my current role, a lot on the digital side of things. Right now I'm launching a new kind of fundamental bartender program called Future Proof. This session that you're in actually really kind of spun off of a series that I have on Freeport app, which is a global bartender app that Miranda did with me a while ago. She's on 3 of those episodes. I think having that access to it is a great thing that can kind of reach all, and then obviously you're kind of what brings it to life with everybody that you encounter and work with. Even like things like this, a few of us are jumping. I have another session in the tasting rooms called Sensory Lab, and we're diving deep into all of these fun experiences like electric dust and buzz button, and just getting hands-on with people is the best thing. But as we look to the next generation, resume builders, we went over some of those. I'd love, kind of as you guys are looking at these, like the do's and don'ts, or, kind of keeping your own independent spirit. I think as we were talking about balance, that's a really important thing for all of us to be like, okay, nobody wants to be just like a corporate robot. Like, that's not fulfilling, right? So what do we do for ourselves and within our teams to keep that creativity going? Like, if someone gives you this 4-ounce cup, don't just be like, okay, well, I guess I'm just going to put a spirit in there and no garnish, right? Marina, you were like, okay, no, I'm still going to do everything that I want to with it. And then just, any kind of parting advice that you guys have before jumping into some Q&A.
I'll start because I feel like for me, the most important thing that you can do is put yourself in the room, and congratulations, you all did that today. So once you're in that room, making meaningful connections, making impactful relationships. We can always have what have you been up to for the last 6 years? I don't know, same job, probably not, but connecting with people and really creating that relationship so that people think of you when they think of whatever it is that you talked about, or when they're looking for somebody to host an event or to do a series. And thank you, Jamie, for that, because education is the one thing I asked of all of our supplier partners when the pandemic hit, like, how can I use this time to help our teams when they can't be behind their bars? And this is an incredible open source for that. But yeah, getting in the room, making the connection. And I have a very odd but effective rule for myself that I'll answer emails within 24 hours or within a business day. And that's for me to keep me sane mostly. Obviously this week I have an away message on, but and also because it shows people that you care about what they need from you, what they're doing, what you're asking of them. It's a sign of respect, and it keeps you so much more organized. So that's a big piece that I think is something to look towards moving forward.
That you put an away message. I thought about putting one on, and then I thought about all the people that would get like responses from me and get that message. But I think it is a really great thing, and it tags into like, especially in the corporate side of things. It's like you have to, if someone reaches out you and you can't respond at that moment, I still shoot back like a quick text message or email, like, I'm away this week. Let's jump back in on Monday, and don't just ghost people, because that's
we
never
don't have
going to
time
work
to
in this.
wait for somebody to get around to answering. You know, like, I feel like, Jamie, if you asked us to do this and we didn't respond, you would find somebody else, right? Like,
Yeah,
a lot of
you
these
gotta
things
keep
are
moving.
important.
Any don'ts? Any kind of cautions that you guys see as like kind of coming into this, or pieces there that we haven't covered? I think we kind of covered a few of like as far as like research, like don't come in unprepared, and don't.
Someone
expect
is
that you
always
know-
watching.
Someone is always watching.
When you don't think somebody in the room might know you or
Especially
be
now with
aware.
social media, everyone is watching and posting now.
It's important to represent yourself well all the time outside of your job as well.
Yeah, and that's a good thing, like too, like you're representative of yourself. You want to put your best foot forward, and you want to represent the company, the bar, etc. well. So know how those worlds meet and be an individual, but make sure that they still meet.
Yeah, I think not only is somebody always watching on social media, and I think people don't realize that people are watching you when you go out, especially if you're using some sort of reservation app. It's something that I always have to tell new employees, because I think there's a lot of passion that goes into what you do. And when you go out sometimes, you want to be a critic, and you might do it internally at your table, but everyone's always watching. And you would assume as bartenders, since we could hear everyone when they're on that side, that we would think that people could hear us when we're sitting in front of there as well, but sometimes it doesn't happen. So I can't tell you how many phone calls I've received in the past of being like, hey, this person came in and they said some shitty stuff. And it's never anything you want to hear, because not only are you representing yourself, you're also representing everyone you work with.
A great one. All right, do we have any questions from you guys? We've been doing a lot of talking. All right, I'm gonna jump down here at the mic.
At one point, you said you avoid using emotional language when you give your employees or your staff feedback. Can you give us some examples of what that would mean in hospitality?
Yeah, so we always say that we praise with emotion, and that you criticize without emotion and in private, and you praise with emotion and in public. So I think a lot of times when you're writing an email, when you're giving somebody feedback that's constructive, people will write things that either aren't factual, or things, and when I say not factual, you might think it's factual to you, but it's laced with emotion. So let's say Shell was late to work today. It's like, Shell was super responsible. She was late to work yet again, which proves that she doesn't care. The only part that's factual in there is that Shell was late. So you would say, Shell was late by 10 minutes today. We had a conversation regarding not being tardy and how this affects the team. And we decided that Shell will work on waking up earlier or setting an alarm or something else. The amount of times that I read through, write-ups or any of those things, or read through emails, and it's just filled with emotional language of people saying things, it's not constructive, right? Like, I think we always need to remember that we're on the same team, and you hired everyone for a reason. So everyone wants to do the right thing. Sometimes it just doesn't happen, and it doesn't happen for a multitude of reasons. So that's why I'm saying don't be emotional when you do that. And then on the other hand, if Shell did a great job, it's like, Shell, you're amazing. It's such a pleasure to work with you today. Like, you really crushed it when you did this, this, and this today. Like, your pours are great, your drinks are great, like whatever you want to say. Thank you so much. Like, that's an emotional response, but that's an emotional response to positivity, versus the other one when you're criticizing, you pull it out. Because criticism is always hard, and the last thing that you want anyone to feel is like that you don't like them, or like they did something wrong and that they're ashamed for it. You want to just correct the behavior, because that's what it's about. You don't want to shame people.
I love that. I couldn't agree more. And I think to kind of piggyback on top of that, one of my phrases that I learned pretty relatively recently is toxic positivity. And it's another kind of coaching moment for me where I'll read end of night reports and they're like, it was a super great night. So-and-so was late. 2 bartenders called out. We had to send somebody home because they cut their hand. The toilet overflowed and there was like a music hitch, but like great night. And I'm like, okay, like we have to recalibrate what a great night feels like. And that's a moment where I like would jump on the phone the next day and be like, hey, okay, so I'm glad that your energy is high. However, let's figure out how to like solve some of these problems and not let some of that language appear in
And not like let it overshadow and not feel the need to like compliment sandwich things just out of, I don't know, feeling that it's a necessity and
I'm
actually
a fan
get
of the
point.
compliment sandwich, I have to say.
Are you a happy
Yeah.
Monday person or?
I'm a happy Monday, no, but it's not about being a fan of the compliment sandwich per se. I think that there's a way of making sure somebody doesn't feel completely deflated when you say something. So if you're saying something that's difficult, you could also talk about other things that they've done that's great. You don't only need to criticize in that way. But you're right, as long as it feels genuine, because the worst thing is if it feels disingenuous, if you tell somebody something and then you reprimand them and tell them something nice, and they feel like all of that's bullshit, then you're doing yourself a disservice as well.
Definitely. All right. I know we're a few minutes, maybe right here.
We're going for Miranda.
Hi.
How are you? Big group you work for, like a big international hotel group, and you're national, right? You said.
I have the Americas, so Canada, U.S., Mexico. Oof. It's fine.
How do you talked a bit about this, I wonder if you can talk a bit more on it. How do you retain that creativity, the inspiration, and the cool shit we were talking about before in the face of a big corporate group?
It's incredibly hard, and I've lost it, and I had to really realize that and come to terms with it. I don't have the experience of watching the guest like see and feel what we do as much as I used to. And what I also realized is that, and I talk with my team about this a lot, like it's once you get to a certain level and once your job is 9 to 5 and you're not out with your bartender friends all the time, you stop seeing what people are doing. You stop finding the cool stuff. So when I travel for work, I make it a priority to search out things that I haven't seen that maybe somebody's talking about, maybe they're not, maybe it's on Eater, maybe the bartender loves it, and try to find the inspiration in the bars and restaurants that I love and that I don't love, and taking that and it almost in the reverse of the feedback, like finding a way to put emotion into your menu in a very corporate environment, like when 15 people have a say and like we're concepting menus with ownership a year before the bar manager's involved, like really finding a way to tie our souls and our energies to what we're doing and making it impactful. But I seek inspiration in museums, in restaurants, in parks, in the clouds sometimes. So like it's really just focusing on making sure that that's a priority.
I love that because my biggest pet peeve is when I hear one of my bartenders or a bartender saying, "Oh, I hate cocktails," or "Oh, I like this bar, but I only get a beer and a whiskey." And for me, that's like you're missing such a good learning experience. Even if you don't like the cocktail you had, you learn something from it, right? So for me, I'm in this because I love it, and I spend most of my time when I'm free going out eating and drinking because I love it. But also because it's part of your job. Like any other job that you work in, there's always continuous education. And while there is continuous education for us in terms of like what Jamie provides and learning about spirits, the other part of the continuous education is going to places, see what people are doing, but not only for inspiration, but also you're part of this industry and you should know what's happening in the industry.
Yeah, and I think that's a great point. And for those of you that this is your first Tales, get out, see some other places, get out of, attend these seminars, but really experience, like, as far as like Tales, like deciding to host it here in New Orleans, it's known for cocktails, it's known for hospitality. So with that, I want to thank you guys so much for coming. This has been an amazing journey with all of you. Thank you guys for taking the time. Yeah. And that's a wrap. Look at all those companies, lots of people, lots of places, right? Thank you guys so much. I look forward to seeing you guys later this week. All right, bye.